Hello, everyone, and welcome to Grammar, the week of March 30th. This video is going to review Error ID 4 and go over your grammar quiz. So it might be helpful if you open up two new windows on your computer, one with Error ID 4 and one with the grammar quiz, both of which you will find in your email inbox, where I graded and returned them to you with comments. So I wanted to talk about the most commonly missed ones on Error ID 4, so we'll begin there with number 4. It says the first place winner, that poodle with the red bow in her hair, is a champion. So the answer to number 4 is a positive phrase. That poodle with the red bow in her hair needs to be set off with commas, because the first place winner is a very specific noun, and that poodle with the red bow in her hair renames our noun of winner. So I did make a mistake on my answer key, and I, like many of you, accidentally put non-essential adjective clause. But I did go back and correct everyone's. So the grade that is put into RenWeb is the correct grade. The grade that you have on your paper that was returned to you from Google Classroom may be 2 points more or 2 points less than you actually got. So I apologize for that mistake, but I looked at the word that and immediately thought relative pronoun, so I just put NAC on my answer key, and it all kind of went downhill from there. But I will say that is an adjective modifying poodle. So in this case, it's not functioning as a relative pronoun. Next, I want to point your attention to number 5 and the essay title, Self-Reliance. So an essay is considered a short publication, and so that is put in quotation marks. Some of you put commas around self-reliance, but like I explained on Error ID 3, you need to really be conscientious of essential or non-essential positives. I put the hint in parentheses here, hoping that that would point you in the direction of essential appositive. So no commas because it is essential. On section 2 and section 3, people's errors were very unique to them, so you'll have to look at the comments on your paper in order to get feedback on those sections. One thing I will point out is that you need to be careful you don't wig out when you're sentence combining. By that I mean forget all you know about good punctuation and mechanics and combine two sentences into one with mistakes. So make sure you do a good proofreading, whether you're sentence combining or correcting faulty parallelism. Make sure you don't make new mistakes. Overall, on this particular error ID, I saw improvement in recognition of the comma splice. So that was something that I brought up a lot on Error ID 3, something I've been talking a lot about this year, but I actually saw more recognition of the comma splice in this particular exercise. So good job on that. Moving on, let's talk about your grammar quiz. And again, you may want to open a new window and have that pulled up. All right, number 1 won the prize for the most missed. In the first 2 chapters of the novel All the King's Men by Robert Penn Warren, comma. You have a series of prepositional phrases there, so the answer is OPP. So in the first 2 chapters, that's one prep phrase of the novel All the King's Men. That is a second prep phrase, and then by Robert Penn Warren, that's your third. Again, like on Error ID 4, don't put commas around All the King's Men thinking that it's a non-essential appositive. The noun in front of it is the novel. That is way too broad for All the King's Men to be non-essential. So we need this book title here to limit the novel that we're talking about. Take a look at number 4. This was your classic comma splice right here. Most everyone got this correct, so I was very pleased. I did have definitely more than one person tell me that the mistake was capitalization and you capitalized Earth. But unless you're talking about Earth as a proper noun, as in the name of a planet, I live on Earth, like I live on Mars, you don't need to capitalize Earth. So the Earth would not be capitalized. Finally, take a look at number 6. So the hint told you that there was a voice mistake. So when you go to correct the voice mistake, you need to find your verb and you need to ask if the subject of the sentence is performing the action of the verb. So are the games doing the developing? Well, of course, the answer is no. The company is doing the developing. So when you make this correction, it needs to read, the American company is developing new computer games. Therefore, the company plans to market its products next year. So that's the correction for number 6. A lot of success on section 2, so we're not going to go over anything on section 2, and we'll move on to section 3. So there were actually quite a few problems with section 3. Some of you are forgetting the difference between a clause and a phrase. Some of you are not looking for your opening words. And if you're not doing this exercise with those lists of subordinate conjunctions and relative pronouns in front of you, that is a mistake. You need to be looking for your opening words. You need to be looking to see if the group of words has a subject and a verb, because those are going to be your clues whether you're dealing with a clause or a phrase. A lot of you were confusing essential and non-essential. Don't forget our mnemonic that we learned for non-essential. A non-essential clause needs commas. So I want to look at the different elements in this exercise that were non-essential. So we're going to start with number 1. Film critics from major newspapers. That is a non-essential appositive phrase. There's no opening word here. And how do we know it's non-essential? Because preview audience is very specific. There's only one preview audience for a film. Number 2 has an essential element. It's here at the end of the sentence, which is this afternoon. Now, how do we know if we've got a clause or a phrase? We look at the word which. That is a relative pronoun functioning as subject of the clause. Which is. There's the verb in the clause. So it meets the criteria of a clause. What kind of clause is it? It's a non-essential adjective clause, because deadline is very specific. We don't know what date the deadline is or what time the deadline is, but we know what a deadline is. It can only be one thing. Number 3, the non-essential element is who was looking for economical transportation. So again, we see our relative pronoun here. We know we have an adjective clause. We know that it's non-essential because here we have a proper noun. Anytime you have a clause or a phrase following a proper noun, it is going to be non-essential. In number 4, we have a proper noun, meaning this phrase that follows the proper noun is going to be non-essential, so it will need commas. Number 5, the plot of my book, A Murder Mystery, is, in my opinion, far too complicated. So here we have a non-essential element because my book is very specific. So surround a murder mystery with commas. Continuing on, number 8 has a non-essential element, and that is here. So this group of words begins with the relative pronoun which. It has a subject and a verb. This is a non-essential adjective clause. How do we know it's non-essential? We look at the noun that it modifies, and that is a proper noun. Number 9 actually has 2 non-essential appositive phrases here. So surround Joseph and Lucien with commas because it follows the very specific Napoleon's two brothers. And here, the American representatives surround it with commas because it follows the proper nouns, Richard Livingston and James Monroe. Number 11 has a non-essential element. Who buy, sell, and trade antiques? We see our relative pronoun here. We see our verb, our verb, our verb. So we have a subject, and we actually have 3 verbs in this group of words. And how do we know it's a non-essential adjective clause? Because Laura and John are proper nouns. So in all in all of the sentences where you had a non-essential element, 5 followed proper nouns. The other 4 followed what I call limited nouns. Napoleon's two brothers, my book, the deadline, the preview audience. Those are all limited nouns or specific nouns. Now, if you take a look at the sentences that had essential elements, you'll notice that the nouns are more general. The people. Well, which people are we talking about? Not every person, just those who were riding in the front of the roller coaster. So here we have an essential element. It's an adjective clause because it begins with the relative pronoun who, and we have our verb, we're riding. So essential adjective clause. We also want to take a look at number 11. That has an essential element. Right here at the end of the sentence, where they will display the items they have to offer. Now, what is that adjective clause modifying? It's modifying the general noun, a townhouse. And notice that I had a lot of people put CDC on number 11, but where actually is a relative adverb. So your opening words for adjective clauses are who, whom, whose, which, that, and the adverb where. And had you had your list in front of you, you would have been able to see that where was on your list of opening words for adjective clauses. So another reason why you should do an exercise like this with your list in front of you. A final sentence that has an essential element is number 8. And it's right here. It's an essential appositive phrase. So why do we know it's essential? Because the 19th century book is very general. There were tons of books from the 19th century. It is essential to know this title, to know which book we're talking about. So notice the difference between those non-essential nouns that the appositives or clauses followed and the essential nouns that the appositives and clauses followed. So that is it on the quiz. And if you'll watch the next video, we will go over error ID 6.